YouTube as well.
We are live. I can't find the screen now. There it is.
Adele, you look puzzled.
I wasn't puzzled. I was just getting my screens right. I was, Jason. Now I'm perfect. I got my Zoom up. I got a chat up. I'm ready to go.
Are we ready then?
Yeah.
I'm still quite surprised how this week it's not Kim.
Don't say anything, Jason. Do not say anything. You will jinx us.
No, I'm just surprised you're the loud one this week. That's all, Adele.
You were on super loud this week, Adele.
You must have built a new mic.
Strange, isn't it?
And I was on nice and early. Right, so guys, if anybody's watching this, share it. Because tonight we're going to be talking about the history of RSE. So like and share, guys. We'll give you a couple of minutes to get a few people watching. If you can like and share. Anyone who's watching now, this is our weekly show on Wake Up UK. It's called the Dragonisation of Child Protection, all things child protection. A lot of things we discuss right now is obviously RSE based. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to be covering some institutional abuse. During those shows, we're going to be interviewing some survivors of some very infamous care homes. Well, the country's most prolific and elite paedophiles. You couldn't get no closer to it. You couldn't get no closer to the action than what we are going to bring to you in the next couple of weeks. So, but tonight we're going to be addressing the RSE, the history of RSE. But we're going to call it CSE because that's what it is, guys. It's comprehensive sex education. That is the term that's used all around the world. But in this country, we've got RSE and SRE. So yeah, as I was saying, guys, I start again for people that wasn't on earlier. Tonight, we're going to be looking at the history of this sex education. So we're going to be going right back to the researchers, the NGOs, so that's the non-government organizations. And we'll also be touching on stakeholders because we hear a lot about stakeholders, don't we? You know, the stakeholders are in charge. We go into the stakeholders for their information and their support. And the stakeholders are very much supportive of this. So that's pretty much the direction we'll be taking tonight, guys. Belle, do you want to start?
Yes, I do. I was just sharing away there. I was. So, yes, going to be talking about the history. Now, I am going to be looking at some of my notes tonight because I want to make sure that I've got everything right, and the history isn't just something small, so it's a lot of history. So there's I've got to make sure that I've got everything correct. So we're going to look at the history of the sex education, but also the organizations that are then involved with the sex education, particularly the one that the UK is going to be getting. So that'll be UNESCO and those who are linked to UNESCO and the other organizations that have contributed to the UNESCO documents. So it's all massively important. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be discussing. So again, I just want to apologize if you see me looking down. It's just for me to check, my notes. So we are going to talk first about a man called Alfred Kinsey. Alfred Kinsey was he was a biologist. He was a zoologist, and he eventually was a sexologist. And he started what was called the sexual revolution. He was known as the godfather of sex. And this was a lot to do with his research. And he was doing his research at Indiana University, which then became known as the Kinsey Institute. Now, if I'm correct, it is the Kinsey Institute for Research in Sex, Gender and Reproduction. So that's what it's known as now. So it's important to know that the Kinsey Institute is still very much up and running, still researching these things. So it's still, you know, we get a lot of people say to us, well, Alfred Kinsey's dead, so what's it got to do with him? He might be dead, but his legacy and his organizations live on. So it's important to know that. So what did Kinsey do? Well, 1948, Kinsey released a book. This book was called The Sexual Behavior in the Human Male. And this book was full of research, his research into people's sex lives. This research was to, he said that proved that most men were deviant in some way or another, that the majority of the population had sexual fantasies that weren't risky or anything like that. In fact, that everybody had them. It's just that some people choose not to talk about them. But also within that book and within that research was children. And Alfred Kinsey's claim that children were sexual beings. Now, even when this came out, there was nobody looked into it. His research was very much taken for it. So out come this book. This book claims that children are sexual from birth. He claims that for example, that the reason that many children have psychological damage from sexual encounters, as he would say, was because of how society viewed these sexual encounters with children. That because society deem it as wrong and tell the child then that it's wrong, that this is the reason why a child would get psychological damage from it, not because of the acts themselves. Kinsey claimed that children were capable of climaxing. It wasn't until a lady, Judith Reisman, came around and exposed to what his research actually was, did the truth come out. In his book, which you can view this yourself. This is all online. This is all on the internet. You can see it yourself. This book had tables in it. One particular table, table 34, became quite infamous. And on this table, it details children from 4 months old up to 14 years old. These were all males. And this was claiming that they were climaxing a number of times over a period of time. And this was, it was timed. The child was abused. This was timed with a stopwatch. And every time a child climaxed, in their opinion, this was documented. For example, there was some which was 24-hour period long. This, I think, was a 12-year-old boy, which was for the 24 hours, claiming that he had climaxed 16 times. For a 4-month-old baby, it doesn't state the time, the length of time, but it claimed that this child had a number of climaxes, again, into double digits. I can't remember the exact amount of ones for each child. There's just too many. It was later discovered then that this data was collected by paedophiles. Kinsey was paying paedophiles to abuse children, time it. In his data for a climax, it states things like arm thrashing, crying, screaming, convulsing, all very much things which are definitely not climaxing for children, but a child in serious distress from the abuse that they were receiving. So this was Kinsey's first book. But actually, just to go back here, I do actually have some of the responses. So you had A 10-year-old child abused for 24 hours, climax 14 times. A 4-year-old in 6 hours, 20 in climax 26 times. A 5-month-old baby, unspecified amount of time. That was 12 climax. A 2-year-old, 11 climax in 65 minutes. So this is some of the stuff that was contained in Alfred Kinsey's book. And it would seem, even after it was exposed then by Judith Reisman, nothing much was done about it. Now, Rex King, or I think Mr. Green, am I right, Kim? Is it Mr. Green? He is in Kinsey's book, but it was a guy called Rex King, one of the most prolific paedophiles out there, abused hundreds of children. Even when this all came out, Kinsey didn't have to release any of his data, the names of any of these paedophiles. This was all protected. Client confidentiality. So,
can I just say, on the note of Rex King, now Rex King wasn't just some man that was traveling around parks or anything like that. Rex King was very much having sex with everyone in the village.
yes,
Children's mothers, he was very charismatic. He had sex with most of his family members as well. By the time he was a very young boy, I'm sure Adele, wasn't he? So these people
yes,
were charismatic. It wasn't, although it was kind of done hush hush, it really wasn't, not in the case of Rex King. Rex King was very active in his community. His crimes were awful. It was so bad that he had documented everything. They were so bad that he hid them in the desert. And Alfred Kinsey convinced him to hand this data over. So you need to be mindful of these things, guys. You know, you need to look into these people. And another thing to look at, I'm also aware when we talk about these things, you're going to think they're historic and it's gone and it doesn't happen or whatever. But you need to look at, there's a documentary called Kinsey's Pedophiles, so a secret history of Kinsey's Pedophiles. But you need to listen to a young girl on there because she was one of the victims. And when you listen to her and then you listen to the response to that, that is what is in control of a vast majority of our sex education right now in this current day, not just in the past. Okay, you need to, it's important you don't just listen to us or take our words for it, because it's empty words, guys. You need to go to these sources and hear it from the horse's mouths. It's really important to understand this, because this is a really difficult subject for people to absorb. And I think that's why people are so easily rejecting it. But we've got to rip off the plaster now, and you've got to go seeking this stuff, and you've got to hear this stuff from the horses' mouths themselves. Sorry, Dad.
That's all right. As I say, there's another book of Kinsey's was also Sexual Behaviour in the Human Female. So these two books, the male and female, became known as the Kinsey Reports. So please need to look into this, because again, as we were saying, this may sound historic, but it's not historic. It's all relevant now. It's all passed through. In fact, it's more relevant now than ever, because it's only now that his influence is actually gaining momentum. It's taken quite like this has been implemented into America, very drip feeding over the years, particularly over the last decade, and it's only now trickling into the rest of the world, and now here in the UK also. So even though that itself is old, it's taken a long time to get it to here, and it's only now that this ideology, this Kinsey's, not just Kinsey and those who supported Kinsey and worked with Kinsey and have gone on from Kinsey, it's only now that it's really starting to come into play. So although Kinsey died, as I said, the Kinsey Institute has gone on, but which I'll also come back into the moment. Kinsey's research, however, as we said, has been influential. Even after it being exposed for what it is still being influential. And I'm going to just tell you some of that. And it's important to know. So again, the organizations that are involved in this, obviously the two big organizations are the United Nations and the World Health Organization. So you may think that Kinsey's got nothing to do with that, but actually in 2014, the Kinsey Institute for Research, Sex, Gender and Reproduction was granted special consultative status with, was it the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations. Now, this was based on the fact that Kinsey saying, for their institute saying that they are just research. So they don't advocate, they don't promote various things like this, that it's just about research. Now, again, it's important to realize here that they have now been given consultation status at the UN on sexuality, gender and reproduction. So the Kinsey Institute claim that they're not an advocacy organisation, but again, let me just go through some of these stuff. They've sponsored the Sexuality 2012, which was research, activism into social change. They again advocated for the foundation of the sex positive culture, which includes teaching bondage, rope tying, whips, genital piercing. The Tor Project, which promotes people to post their sexual activities anonymously, and you know, and it doesn't matter what sexual activity, it's not all anonymous, and they encourage those to post into this. Now, it's important to realise here as well that we said there is nothing that somebody can't post about this. So that leads us on to knowing that Kinsey's research essentially hasn't ended. You know, there is an app. You can post into it, your sexual history, your sexual activities. This can all go to them. And this includes those who may be abusing children. So,
and there's no chance no one will ever go to jail for this. Again,
no.
Go back to that documentary. They have arranged their research, their historical research and their current research. They have arranged it so it can be erased in the click of a button. Again, that is a quote from them, from the researchers and from the scientists. Then a little bit off track, there's a question here. Totally unethical. Who gave consent to this study?
Well, back then they wouldn't. So the study would have been, the study was helped funded by the Indiana University. So that's who would have helped fund that study. But because of, they wouldn't have known, well, who would have known actually? We don't know who would have actually known what his research was, and those who wouldn't have. But again, the ethics would have been a lot different back then as well on what, you know, the ethics codes for research. But ultimately, this would have been funded by the university themselves. I do have... Actually,
they were a bit misled, weren't they? Because it wasn't until Judith Reisman blew the cover on it. Because as far as they would have, they portrayed it as this research was done on the general population. Yeah. But it wasn't. It was done on violent rapists and paedophiles. So it had absolutely nothing at all to do with the general population. But that's how they sold the book, and that's how they started the revolution. And it was later on then that they then realised, well, yeah, the everyday person then realised what was in these documents, you know. But they put it was the entire male population. Yeah. So it would have been seen there wouldn't have really been an ethical issue there then,
Yeah.
either, Del, you know?
Yeah, no, so Joan has just put it in there. Yes, Joan, you're correct. So it was given backing and credibility by the Indiana University, and then it was funded by the Rockefeller Institute. So
Didn't Hugh Hefner have
no, that was, so the Rockefeller Institute then backed, and then Hugh Hefner funded the start of CCAS.
Okay.
So we'll get on to that. We'll get on to CCAS. So again now, so again, Kinsey's research, what has it done? Well, for a start, it has contributed to the repeal of numerous laws protecting women and children in America. So again, I'm just going to read off my page as well here. So his research has been credited to convincing legislatures across America. He managed to reduce penalties for rape, statutory rape, seduction, prostitution, wife and child battery, bestiality, indecent exposure, incest, bigamy, child and adult sex, pornography, and much more. Now, a big part of that was because Kinsey had claimed that 95% of nearly the 9,000 males in history were sex offenders and considered sexually deviant under the law. And he claimed that laws then had to be liberalised, they had to be repealed, or you were going to be locking up men left, right and centre. And again, he claimed that his extensive data on children also proved that they were unharmed by sex, and that molesters don't repeat their crimes, so therefore all molesters in prison right now should be put onto parole. And originally he was brought in to try and strengthen California's sex laws. But actually, after hearing from Kinsey, they ended up doing widespread paroles and change of leniency. So, so yes, that wasn't good. So another, it says, I got here how you had 2,500 conservative US lawmakers. They warned of the dangerous influence that Kinsey's Institute was having on American laws. And they did a report themselves in 2004. Their report was Restoring Legal Protections for Women and Children, and a historical analysis of the state's criminal codes. These lawmakers detailed how Kinsey, who they called a pornography addict, sadomasochistic, bi-homosexual, paedophile propagandist, was able to launch the sex revolution, release sex crimes, and sabotage American sex laws. That was 2004, and that's 2,500 lawmakers that have raised this, and yet here we are, 2021, still implementing Kinsey's ideologies.
Can I just say with this recent law change in California? Now, in California, they've done another law change there, and it is you can have sex, well, you can rape a child as long as it's 10 years younger than you and over the age of 11. So a 21-year-old can rape an 11-year-old, a 22-year-old can rape a 12-year-old. But if you type this into Facebook, they've legalized paedophilia. The fact checkers are going to come back and say no. But when you type in the correct terminology, guys, that is what we're looking at now in California, okay? So a 21-year-old can rape an 11-year-old. That is completely legal now, all right? So California and Texas are two places you need to keep an eye on, because that's where things are really hotting up for this education.
Yeah, so again, you've got, if you was to use Westlaw, which is the largest legal database in the world, it has more than 650 Kinsey citations in law journals from 1980 to 2011, which tells us 2011 he was still being cited in journals, well, I would imagine to obviously claim of child sexualness. So again, we have here some of the things is Ohio, he lightened sex crime penalties. Duke University, he managed to promote the harmlessness of boy prostitution. It cited in a court case that 95% of males are sex offenders in a rape case in 1972. So again, his research is being used to still try and reduce sex crimes for sex offenders. So again, the Kinsey Institute now, so they claim that one of their claims is that they advance sexual health. But we know that the Kinsey Institutes have been promoting radical, unhealthy sexual ideologies. So I haven't mentioned Wardell Pomeroy before this moment. So Wardell Pomeroy was Kinsey's right-hand man at the Kinsey Institute, and he later went on to found CICAS, which I'll talk about them a bit later on. So promoting unhealthy sexual ideology. So you had Wardell Pomeroy. He got a position at the CICAS. And he was a big promoter of paedophilia and incest. In 1980, Time magazine wrote an article on Pomeroy called Attacking the Last Taboo, which was about removing and legalizing incest. A quote from Pomeroy himself was that it is time to admit that incest need not be a perversion or a symptom of mental illness. Incest between children and adults can be sometimes beneficial. And he was a big promoter of incest between mothers and sons, to claiming that the best person to get their son ready for sex and to ensure that they had a healthy sexual relationships when they were older was for the mother to teach her son.
His words were, that is the best incest of all, wasn't it?
Yeah, the best, between a mother and son. So they have a website again, so they have a confidential website, which is for college-age adults, which claimed that it's very normal and very common for men and women to view extreme sexual images. Now, this is a quote from the site itself, which is, many people watch sexually explicit images of group sex, bondage, anal sex, oral sex, although they may not partake in these. Now, big promotions, as again we see throughout the comprehensive sexuality education, a big promoting of pornography, but plenty of research shows that pornography is not good for the brain at all, that it can cause addictions, and it has the same negative impact that you would have for being addicted to something like heroin. And you've got a psychologist, Jennifer Brown, who's got a book called The Psychological Effects of the Innocent Exposure to Softcore Pornography on the Developing Brain. And they've done imaging on children's brains, and it shows how even what seem like innocent sexual images can have serious negative impacts on the brain. But again, the Kinsey Institute massively encourage and promote the use of pornography. Again, the Kinsey Institute have a huge, I think one of the largest collections of pornography for student researchers to view. In fact, people now who are training to be sexologists themselves have to sit and watch hours of pornography, and the point of it is to desensitize them so that they can do sex research without getting embarrassed or disgusted or anything like that. So again, still big influence. Let me just check. The Kinsey reports, who again is still, you can look onto Google and you can see news articles from recent years, within the last 10 years, which still look up to Kinsey, and these will be UK papers as well. However, the Kinsey report has actually been listed in the top 10 most harmful books of the 19th and 20th century. So why we're using the research for comprehensive sexuality education, which has been named one of the top 10 most harmful books in the world. So back to, do you want to say something, Kim?
Insane.
It is insane, yeah. So going back to Kinsey and sorry, just looking at the comments there. So Kinsey and his data. So the most qualified researchers out there have dismissed his research, has called it fraudulent. It says it fails to meet even the minimal standards for accepted research design, and it could never be replicated. And research has to be able to be replicated. If it can't, then it's no good. It's no good, and it's not allowed. If it can't be replicated, it's no good. We know that his research was mostly based on criminals. He was going into prisons, interviewing criminals. He was interviewing prostitutes, paedophiles. He was interviewing anyone who may have already had a more, it's hard to get the right words, a more darker interest or colourful interest in sex. So he was choosing people who would have.
It was the most violent. It was the most violent of sex offenders as well. So it wasn't just paedophiles. It was like the worst of the rapists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. He was saying here 40 prisons he visited altogether. So another organisation which are very much active, which very much promote Kinsey's research is NAMBLA, which is the North American Man-Boy Love Association. So they promote to be able to have sexual relationships between children and adults. So it says they have on their website, again, a quote from Kinsey themselves, which is, the emotional reactions of the parents, police officers, and other adults who discover that the child has had such contact may disturb the child more seriously than the sexual contacts themselves. The current hysteria over sex offenders may very well have a serious effect on the ability of many of these children to work out their sexual adjustments some later on. So again, that is saying, like I said earlier, that their claims that it's actually society that damages the children around sex abuse, not the abusers themselves. Another person who has wrote about Kinsey is Tom O'Carroll. Now, Tom O'Carroll was the chairman of PI, which was the British Paedophile Information Exchange. He cites Kinsey extensively in his book. So again, you've got the supporters of, you've got still supporters now. Kinsey's claim that children can and should be sexual from the earliest stages of life, and it should become the basis virtually for all modern comprehensive sexuality education programs taught around the world. Well, we know that this is the basis for comprehensive sexuality education, which is being taught all over the world. I just got something here that is from Miriam Grossman as well. Now, we've had Miriam Grossman on the show before. We did a webinar with her. We do have some more webinars coming up with Miriam next month. I think the start of next month, is it, Kim?
Yeah, and that's
so.
And, yeah, I think that'll be a good time to go into things further with Nambra and that. But yeah, they're going to be quite interesting, guys.
Yeah, so again, I've already mentioned, as I said here, the Reporter cell phone app. So I'm actually not going to say the app name on here. I don't want to promote it. So again, it's saying anonymous users can fill out surveys about a variety of sexual topics, including pornography use, unwanted sexual experiences, sexual fetishes, flirting, public displays of affection, sexual activity. The app allows users to indicate their gender, age, and attitude.
I think we've lost her
Okay,
out.
guys. Are you there, Del?
I think her internet's cut out there, Kim.
Oh, great.
What normally happens when this happens is a person will fall out of Zoom and then have to reconnect. So that's what I expect.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. So as you can see, right, this is an open sorry. It's an open secret where this research comes from, okay? It's published. This is the science. These are academic journals, right? This has been proven in a court of law as well. You know, so when Judith Reisman blew the cover on this research and she looked into it and realized it was pedophiles and children, it was a Playboy estate that actually took her to court. So not only are they published academic journals, not only are they recently cited in books up to this very day, it's been proven in a court of law and it still exists. And before I pass back over to Adele, I want to touch on Tom O'Carroll again. He is very much active today, okay? He still exists. There's an interview with him. You see interviews of him when he was far younger. There's a more recent one and it was on 60 Minutes, which is an Australian program. And on there, he's telling you how you can have sex with a 4-year-old child through complimenting her knickers. Okay, so you need to find these people and hear their words, okay? Because these are the people behind this education. These are the people pushing and promoting this education, right? And we can keep telling you until we blow in the face. It is not going to properly sink in until you hear it from the horses' mouths. And the moment that happens, guys, that's the moment we start to fight back, and that's the moment we start to change things. And until then, you know, we're just going to keep battling. Sorry, Del, one. Oh, but Del, you're on mute now, love.
Oh, sorry. So yeah, that's kind of Kinsey and the start with his organisation. So again, as I said, then you had Wardell Pomeroy, but then there was another lady as well called Mary Calderon. She was a big fan of Kinsey's. What I got down here. So Mary Calderon wanted to move away from what she called was a no-sex education, and she wanted to change it to a say yes sex education. So with fund money from Hugh Hefner, she started SECUS, which is the Sexuality Education Information Council of the United States. SECUS now are the largest providers of sex education in America. So Mary started this. You had Wardell Pomeroy, who was a president. Another president for SECUS in the earlier days was a man called John Money. Now, not going to go too much into John Money today because he actually will come up again with us in a few weeks' time when we're discussing another area of this. But John Money, again, was big friends with Kinsey and Pomeroy and did a few articles for SECUS, again, promoting incest. Also, a big advocate for having it legalized and how it should be allowed. He did a big article on culture. Why was it taboo in some cultures? And, so he was a big promoter of incest also. So Wardell and Mary started SECUS, and SECUS publicly argued for relaxing the taboos against adult and child sexuality, even incest. They published an article calling to an end around incest. And there's another man, James Ramey. He stated how incest was being treated, how masturbation was treated 100 years ago. So we know that obviously things like masturbation went through a period of anybody doing it. Gosh, some people would be sent to the mental assignments for doing it. As I said with John Money, like they didn't believe that incest would cause any harm to children. Mary Calderon, she said that she wanted a sex education that would teach children from the day that they were born that they were sexual beings, and that expression of their sexuality is positive, natural, and healthy. She told parents that children are sexual, they think sexual thoughts, and they do sexual things, and that parents must accept and honour their child's erotic potential. She claimed that professionals who study children have recently affirmed the strong sexuality in a newborn. So again, that we know that this research that she is claiming affirmed that children were sexual beings and that newborn babies even have a strong sexuality. We know is the research that Kinsey had from paedophiles. So SECUS then, SECUS, one of the biggest organizations for sex education in America. Now, alongside with the big promotion of SECUS for sex education was also Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood was originally started, I haven't got her name next to me, so I can't remember her name. Planned Parenthood was originally started as an organization for eugenics and depopulation. So it was started within black communities to, they were paying women to be sterilized from poor countries. They started giving out birth control into areas where they didn't want or didn't think that people should reproduce. And then they were also paying and encouraging those in middle class to have children and reproduce. So Planned Parenthood, SECUS very much came together then in delivering their sex positive comprehensive sex education. So you've got SECUS promoting the sexual activity, and you had Planned Parenthood providing the contraceptions and the abortion and the counselling. So that was the start of those two. They have been actively doing sex education in America now for many years. And then in comes UNESCO. So UNESCO then come up with also comprehensive sexuality education, and this was their 2009 document, but this was also co-written by Nadine Ecker. Now Nadine Ecker was at the time president for SECUS. And again, Nadine Ecker was the one who was responsible for the controversial content in the UNESCO document. The first UNESCO document in 2009 also encouraged masturbation for children from age 4. So the 2009 UNESCO document was around, and then in jumps the World Health Organization. So the World Health Organization then also bring out their own comprehensive sexuality education guidance. Again, this is encouraging masturbation from birth is the WHO document. That's encouraging children to touch their bodies, know their bodies from the moment that they are capable of doing so. So that takes us then to the WHO documents. Now, it's important to note that even though our current guidance is taking us to the 2018 UNESCO document, our UK government, so that's the whole UK government, signed up, with 5 select committees, so they'll be each country.
All the individual governments of the UK, including Southern Ireland, all agreed to this, and we know this because a global document tells us, and so do the individual documents tell us.
Yeah.
There's no going away from that. That is a fact.
So the UK government signed up to this document in 2017. So when we look at who else is involved in the UNESCO documents as well, so we've got Planned Parenthood, but then you've also got International Planned Parenthood Federation, and they are London-based. So they started up in London. Now, again, it's important to know all these names and all these people who were involved. So when Planned Parenthood was started, I need to get this right. That was started by Bill Gates' father or grandfather?
Grandmother, I think. Oh no, his grandfather sat on the board.
So that was started again with so many names, so much stuff to remember that sometimes if I haven't got it right in front of me, I can't remember all names at the same time. But
the full thing to SECUS, I can never remember it.
Yeah. So again, but the reason I'm mentioning Bill Gates is again because it comes in elsewhere, and it's important to see how all these are connected. So Bill Gates is connected to Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood is connected to SECUS, to UNESCO, to our UK documents. Now, that's also important to know because one of the stakeholders and one of the pushers for these documents and full comprehensive sexuality education is the Family Planning Association. And why that is relevant as well is because the Family Planning Association are then linked to International Planned Parenthood Federation, Foundational Federation. And in 2017, there was a family planning summit, and the hosts for the family planning summit for International Planned Parenthood Federation was the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So again, this is important to know where all these links come in. So you think you're not connected to Planned Parenthood, but yet you've got the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation also hosting the Family Planning Summit, which is for us. And it's at that same year that the WHO documents are then presented to the UK government by the Family Planning Association. So also writing these UNESCO documents then is UniAIDS. In terms of Africa and some of the documents that they have published and their comprehensive sexuality education, I think the one magazine is that Happy, Healthy and Hot, Kim.
The name says it all, doesn't it?
So now this is particularly for areas where there's high HIV status, and this guidance encourages sexual activity between underage children, but it also tells them that it's their sexual right, that they do not have to disclose whether they have HIV or whether they have AIDS. And it also tells them that it's their right as to whether they're using protection and things like that. So all these organisations that are involved in this UNESCO document very much also promote and push that children are sexual. You can look online at Planned Parenthood Comprehensive Sexuality Education. Again, throughout, it promotes that children are sexual beings, that children should, their belief is that children should have a fulfilling and healthy sex life. And the more information they know now, the more fulfilling their sex lives are going to be.
But we know that's not the case. We know that is really wrong. We can support that with medical evidence.
Yeah.
This is dangerous, this is not sexual health, this is sexual freedom with a heavy consequence. But we discussed a bit of that in Miriam's presentation, the last one she did. So you can look back at that, or we can touch on it another time, guys. We do try to touch on it when we do mention this education,
To go back to, so again, we're looking at, so when we've been investigating this comprehensive sexuality education, we have, as some of you watching will know, we get a lot of comments about masturbation all the time, and people can very much just focus on masturbation. Well, we haven't just looked at UNESCO, we haven't just read the guidance, we've then looked at all these organisations that are contributing to these documents. Again, like I said, Planned Parenthood. Now, Planned Parenthood are one of the biggest NGOs on this planet, and they are the largest providers of contraception, sexual health information and abortion. But what most people don't know about Planned Parenthood is also what they do with babies, fetuses that are aborted. And back a few years ago, there was an undercover investigation. I don't have the name of the people that did the investigation, so I'll put that into the comments somewhere afterwards because it's not in front of me.
In description anyway, Del.
Where they did an undercover investigation into Planned Parenthood. They were pretending to be biotech companies, and they were buying parts of aborted fetuses. So some is throughout it they are documented as cells, but it would be things like so a liver, for example, was $750. And these are sold in vast quantities to biotech companies. In these videos, in this undercover research, it was shown that these are not documented. The people involved that worked at Planned Parenthood were talking about how somebody might come for them to them for an abortion, and they would try and delay it by a few weeks, because in a few weeks' time the baby's organs would be more developed and therefore would reach more money for the companies that want to buy these parts. They also spoke about how, because some terminations can happen far into the third trimester, that sometimes they perform an abortion and the baby would still be alive when it was delivered, and they would just remove this baby, and how it would then just be put into a room until the baby is now deceased. This was all exposed. Planned Parenthood massively denied it. They claimed that the video footage was all edited. However, then in 2018, again, this is all online. You can see this. You can see the court. You can see the court themselves with the directors of Planned Parenthood in court under oath, admitting to all of this, which is, however, nothing's happened. Yet this is illegal organ harvesting. This is illegal human trafficking of, besides the point of it being deceased or organs, it's still human trafficking. So again, you've got Planned Parenthood, which have been exposed in all this corruption, where abortion, they make most of their money from abortion, and then most of their money then is coming from, once they've aborted these babies, they're then illegally selling the parts for these babies too. Now, this isn't to bring up a pro or choice debate on abortion. This is to bring awareness to you on what these organisations are doing with these. So some baby.
Like what you're saying there, Adele, like what you're saying there. Now, a lot of people would say, but that's America, that's America, that's America. For us guys at street level, that would be a family planning clinic. Now, we've all visited a family planning clinic in our teens, and it was fun, and it was a laugh, it was a joke. So for us, we see just a little community centre or whatever, but it's far bigger than that. And I think it's really important as well. Like Adele said, you can bring up the argument for or against abortion or whatever. But I think something we really need to realise here, guys, is we were always made aware that these family planning clinics were there to help us, but they're a $1 billion industry, and industries, as the last time I found an industry that gave things away, nothing came back. Once it's gone, it's gone. Once you've given something to someone, it's gone. So these people aren't giving anything. They're providing a service, and they are creating customers for that service.
And this is what is so important to realise, is when you are looking at this, the very people who are promoting this education are the very people who are going to make money from this education.
A lot of money. A
lot, yes. And that's including, so again, we don't want to hear that this is America, Yes, but America is now in the UK, in our sex education. So and that's what is important to realise, that IPPF They're based in London. Our Family Planning Association are linked with them. They are the one who have then promoted and encouraged and sold these documents to our government. So this isn't just about what does the guidance say. It's about who are the organisations involved in this. Another organisation big involved with this is Brooke. Now, we have had lots and lots of people message us to say how Brooke are the ones providing the resource, especially in England. You have to remember a lot of the resources are all out in England. We know what resources the schools have been encouraged to go to in England. And I've not looked too much at what Brooke resources are for the primary school. But again, once you get to secondary from age 12, this is where all the Brooke resources are encouraging children to try different sexualities before they settle on what sexuality that they are. It is Brooke and the Family Planning Association, which encourage that teenagers write sex lists, compare their sex lists. These are the people who are promoting, including Durex as well. Durex are another sponsors and providers of resource for this sex education. Again, which are encouraging teenagers to have sex. Even Brooke, even the document states that although it is illegal for an adult to have sex with a child under 16, it tells children, it actively tells children, however, the UK courts are not bothered about children who are the same age having sex with each other. So don't worry about that. So even though they are told that it is illegal to have sex under 16, they are also told, don't worry about it if the other is under 16 also, if you are of a similar age and you are of a similar maturity and that you have consented, the courts won't bother doing anything. So yes, it's illegal, but not with each other. So that's what they're telling the Brooke, the Family Planning Association. They all actively tell children this once they get to secondary school, that it is okay for them to be having sex.
On here about is that extortionate rates because of it, Adele? You know,
and this is what we're seeing all over the world right now. Again, Australia has just had masses of their private schools come. Over 9,000 girls have written down accounts of sexual assault. And Australia's answer to this now is to campaign that children need to be taught consent. Now, I've read some of the stuff coming out of Australia. A lot of it is involved with teenage girls and their boyfriends. The boyfriend not taking no for an answer. A lot of it with alcohol involved. Now, what they are trying to say is that we need to start teaching enthusiastic consent. So the boy knows the difference between a girl who's going, oh, okay then, and a girl who's going, oh yeah, I'm well up for it. So what we are doing here is, instead of teaching girls, which studies have shown us, girls want to know how to say no. Girls want to know how to resist, or the majority of girls. They want to know how to do it, which isn't going to hurt their boyfriend's feelings, because they feel guilt-tripped into doing it. So we're going from empowering girls to go, that's my body, I'm not doing it, I don't want to actually telling girls, no, it's fun. This is actually really fun. This is something that everybody does, and you just need to say yes to it. Get on the pill, get on the SexWise website, and have a look at some tips and get on with it. And that's the route we're going down. So it's massively important that you look into all the people that are, because UNESCO document isn't written by one person, it's written by multiple organizations.
Right, consent is through this, right, from the word go, guys. And for me, obviously, sex abuse is a big thing of mine, right? Consent features throughout the definition of many forms of sex abuse, because there's so many problems when we go for prosecution, and now we're giving kids traffic light system, you know, to see if they're actually consenting or not.
Yeah.
We need to scrap consent.
Yeah.
Right? Consent is yes or no, right? No is no. We also need to teach kids the consequence of consent, you know, so when we've got a 15-year-old girl downtown, she goes up a lane with an 18-year-old boy, these girls need to understand, they need the confidence, they need the confidence in themselves not to fall for the first person that pays them attention, because the consequence you could have on an innocent, or would have set out to be an innocent interaction. Do you know what I mean? We need to teach the kids the consequence of consent. And what these documents do, right? So what they'll do, they'll take you back to, they'll tell you the law, and they'll tell you the law once. So the school package and the school education, they'll tell you the law, okay? Nowhere in the law does it state the definition of child sex abuse. Nowhere in the law does it state the definition of child sexual exploitation. Nowhere in the law does it state the definition of harmful sexual behavior. So nowhere in that classroom does anyone understand that what they are teaching is the definition of these offences. So to me, it drives me mad. To me, it absolutely baffles me. And because I won't get into that debate with people, right? They see that as an arrogance in me. Well, no, it's not an arrogance, it's a fact. I cannot stand to see that in these documents. And we've got to keep going back to the World Health Organization document. Differentiate between good and bad secrets. Know what's good. Listen to your body. Say yes and no.
Yeah.
It's say no. And what we need to do in this country, we need to get rid of consent. We have to get rid of consent full stop, because there's a lot of problems around that, guys.
Yeah. And many abused children are consenting to their abuse because they don't realize what they do, what they're going through is abuse. And there is even children who know they are being abused. They know what is happening is wrong, but yet they think, because they've been manipulated, because they've been groomed, they know it's wrong, but in their head, they're still consenting to it. You know, they think they know it's wrong, but they think they're in a relationship that is with this person, or that there's something that it's special. What's happening between them, and you have to remember that these people are going to have far more power and influence on this child than any school teacher is going to have.
But like you said last week, Adele, look how easy it is for adults to get in these situations.
Yeah.
Look how easy it is, you know, how often does an adult ignore red flags?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, how often will the brain accept that, hang on, this is not quite right, I need to react?
Yeah.
Well, this is children we're talking about now, little innocent children. They, and I keep saying this all the time, they only know up to today. They don't know anything else. All they know and all they understand is what they've learned up to today, up to the present time. We're on the outside with all this experience looking in. We've lived there. These children don't know nothing. They only know what we tell them. If we raise a child telling them a square is a circle, they will be telling you that square is a circle. They're not going to question it. They're not going to question anything, you know?
And also, again, we're talking about development here. Like these documents, this guide, not even these documents, the resources. And again, these are the resources for us. Any of the resources which we're sharing, which are for England, are going to be the resources given to our schools as well to look at, because as we said, the UK government signed this up, all of them. So it's the same stakeholders, it's the same pushers, it's the same sponsors. So we're all getting the same resources, we're all getting the same sex education, we're just all getting it at a different time, and the mandatory levels are so far different. It's at different stages of legislation for everybody, but we're all getting the exact same thing.
Not just that, we've had an email sent out by a school in South Wales that are starting the RSE. That school had, let's just say, a few typing errors in it, which made
Yeah.
a bit of. We asked that school, is this email solely for this school? Yes, this email is solely for this school. Well, why the hell was the links taking us through to England? And that was before we passed this bill. That was just trial in RSE, and that was a school in South Wales. We've got it.
Yeah.
We've got that email.
Yeah. And I guess so these, these resources, so they're encouraging, so as well as sexual intercourse, they're obviously saying how the best way to, obviously, if you want to avoid pregnancy altogether, is that there's other things that you can do. So they encourage children to engage in foreplay, kissing, cuddling, naked massage. I'm not sure what the word they use for, I think our slang term for it would be dry humping. I can't remember the exact term they're using on the resource. Now, you have boys who have just going through puberty, lots of testosterone running through their bodies. We also know the prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed till mid-20s. The last bit for development is reasoning, is restraint, control. They are the very last parts of our brains to develop. And then we're expecting these 14-year-old boy, 15-year-old boy who's full of testosterone, raging through puberty, going through these growth spurts, and you're with not great control over his reasoning, over his control, over choices and decision making. And we're expecting him to then engage in sexual activity where, again, studies show for a boy who's 14, 15, he is more likely to be engaging in sexual activity with a girl younger, so more around the ages of 13, where girls who their first sexual encounters tend to be with an older male. So you're then expecting this boy to be just engaged in foreplay or a naked massage and then be able to control himself when his girlfriend is saying, no, she doesn't want to go any further. That he's not going to sit there going, but because he's been taught enthusiastic consent now, and to respect his girlfriend's wishes, that when his girlfriend or partner, or whether it be one night, whether there be alcohol involved, and you're expecting this boy now to be going, right, I've got to get I need a condom, or when she's saying no, not to be saying, oh, come on, please, just this once, we're already naked. And we're expecting these teenagers to adequately, handle these situations. I personally don't see how that will be, especially when girls who have also just kind of been through puberty, where their hormones are actually saying, I want love and I want a relationship, and they want closeness. And these girls then hope that if they do engage in these sexual activities, that this boy then may become a boyfriend, and that they're going to be together, and these lovely things. And none of these consequences, none of the emotional sexual health is being taught in these documents. And this is the important points that we're trying to get across here.
That's it, but they're not getting taught consequence of anything. There is no consequence of anything. Even down to pregnancy, there's a fix. And we need to teach these kids consequence, because they've got to live with the consequence of their actions for the rest of their lives. So why aren't we teaching them about that?
And I just feel like it is so important right here now to say that, again, we are not against sex education. We absolutely believe that especially teenagers need to be equipped for what is out there. It's in your face, it's everywhere. Music videos, movies, adverts, everything. You can't escape the sexualization going on around us. It's so blatant now that even us as adults don't even see the half of it, don't pay attention to it. But we want a sex education that's actually going to protect the children. It's actually going to safeguard them. It's actually going to inform them with all the knowledge that they need to know to manage and maneuver healthy sexual relationships.
We want a package that's actually not written by paedophiles.
Absolutely. And then is the teachers' training coming into it. Again, all of this that is coming out at the moment with peer-on-peer abuse in schools. How are all these teachers now expected to save all these children from sexual abuse at home when they're not able to stop sexual abuse happening on their own school grounds? All these newspaper reports that are showing us at the moment that teachers are not adequately trained in sexual abuse. They're not adequately trained in safeguarding. And you can say to us, oh, yes, we are. Oh, yes, they are. Every 2 years they do their it's a level 2 safeguarding.
Well, we go back to the consent. You know, they're nowhere near trained because they would understand the consent is a massive part of sex abuse. Now, these teachers are only reiterating what's in these policies and what's in these documents. You know, that was somebody else's job to provide that to the teacher. But again, it's a specialist subject, it's a specialist complex area. And, you know, teachers can't possibly cover it.
And we know that this is going to be
incorporated in their degree. That's the only time. That's the only time teachers will ever be equipped for this, is if they have to do it. Anyone that's working with children, all teachers are professional, okay? All teachers are professional. They've done a degree. All social workers have done a degree. There is no reason why this cannot be incorporated into part of that. Then we wouldn't be having this discussion again. Because they would know that kids can't consent. They would know, because we've argued with teachers and they have pushed how important consent is. Yes, it's very important to a perpetrator.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is what we need to fight for now. And this is why this education's come about, guys, because yes, there is training there, but it's not in the right areas. It's not in the areas we told it's in. Okay, so this is not, and people saying we're cherry picking what we don't like. Yes, we are, because perpetrators will cherry pick their children. They will cherry pick the vulnerabilities. They will cherry pick which families they can win over. All right. And when we see these dangers, we've got to pull them up on it.
Yeah. And it's important, again, to just state how, again, some of the things that we've had back said to us is, you know, we've got to protect these children who are coming out of abusive households, where sexual abuse may be happening in the household. Hold on. You're acting like there's no paedophile, anything else out there. Again, newspaper. There isn't a week that goes by there isn't a teacher in the paper.
Right. Well, can I
being exposed?
I'll answer that for you, right? The reason why they keep doing that is because the stats on the ONS, right? So the stats on the ONS show us that, yes, the most reported sexual abuse is familial abuse, right? So that's abuse at home. That is the most reported and recorded. But like you've spoken about, Del, the institutional abuse, what we're going to be covering in the next few weeks, right?
Yeah.
Institutional abuse, you spoke about private schools. You on Google Scholar, there are thousands of journal articles, academic articles on institutional abuse in private schools. Okay, now these teachers in these schools aren't registered with the Education Council Wales. they move from school to school. They abuse hundreds of thousands of children. That is not on the ONS, right? That is not on the ONS. So again, this training package the teachers are looking at is telling them most abuse happens at home. Now, if they did independent research and independent study like we've been doing, now in Wales, the Education Council Wales are where the public schools, where our children's schools, the teachers are registered there. A third of the latest fitness to practice panels were for sexual offences. We do not know if those offences were reported to the police. We do not know if they were actually recorded or if they were just incidents, you know, that were brought to the panel saying. So we don't even know if they're on the ONS. We also know as well, Adele, that we had a disclosure from a family a couple of weeks ago, and where their child was abused in an educational establishment. They didn't know about it until a year later. And during the discussion with their children, the social worker asked these questions. Do you like so-and-so? Yes, because this person was a one-to-one teacher, okay? Why? Oh, he does this with us and that with us, okay? Are you scared of him? No. Case dropped. That person's gone on to go to another school now, right? And that was classic grooming. That was what those children described to that social worker was classic grooming. Now, if they had this in-depth, independent research and training during their degrees, they would understand that. There would be no case closed. And that person would not be he's free to go to any school now. So those children in that school, those statistics are not recorded. And then we look at other studies, right? So if, you know, this is another thing again. Out of all abuse perpetrated in school, a recent study by Andrea Darling puts it at 87% female perpetrated. So why isn't the ONS telling us that? Well, there's no such thing as a rape charge for women in the UK. So what these teachers are looking at, the document the teachers are looking at is a stat from the ONS or a stat from the NSPCC, where 1 in 5 adults report they were abused from when they were a child. Well, 1 in 5 adults didn't necessarily go to the police. See, so this is very important that people understand these things, because our training packages and the information given to our teachers is very vague. And this is a hidden crime, okay? It's a hidden crime. It's an epidemic scale. It's a crime you cannot, you need to be preventative on. It's too late after the act. And it's a lack of understanding around these definitions. If these definitions were brought to the attention of our workers around children, we wouldn't be having this discussion now, because that document wouldn't even be coming over the borders.
And I just want to mention, you know, you're saying there about, you know, words and terminology and all the rest of it. Again, if our governments and our media and organisations were that true and honest in their wanting to stop child abuse, especially sexual abuse, then again, why do they keep using terminology such as child prostitute instead of a child being forced to have sex to make money for somebody else? Non-consensual sex, which is rape, you know, call it what it is. Child pornography, another one, we're still calling it child pornography. Now, it's not child pornography, it is video footage of child abuse, of child rape. That's what it is. It's not child pornography. And until we start publicly using the correct words for the bad things that are happening to children, instead of watering down terminology so that it doesn't sound so serious, you know, we're not going to make waves. We're not going to make waves when the biggest influences are reducing the severity of what is happening to kids. And just was looking through.
Absolutely. Can I just say there's been a real brave comment here. Right, there's a real brave comment here. Yes, I got pregnant at 14 and the male was a lot older. I felt pressured into sex. Nothing has changed and I'm 14.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
we get a lot of things like that. There was another girl the other day. She had sex when she was 12 and when she was drunk with a 17-year-old boy, and she was absolutely infatuated by him. Obviously, her mother went ballistic. Got the police involved and the social services, this, that, and the other. And she absolutely hated her mother for it.
Yeah.
She hated her mother for it. She hated everything about her mother. And like now she's saying, only now I can see it was wrong. Only
Yeah.
now I can see it. Because he went on to do it as well. Like he continued doing it to young girls, you know. So as he got older, the girls still stayed younger.
Yeah.
You know? So like, so this didn't stop. It wasn't just her, you know, and like she said, she absolutely despised her mother because she was infatuated by this boy.
And again, it's teaching girls about like statistics and stuff like that. I'm a single parent, or my daughter was growing up in a single parent household. Statistics tell us that if you're a young girl, if you're a girl and you come from a single parent household, they're at more risk for having engaged into sexual activity younger, normally because of this desire and this need and want for a male in their lives. Again, a child who has a parent who themselves is promiscuous, has frequent boyfriends, again, is going to be more likely to engage in sexual activity much younger. And it's just pointing out what, you know, what Emma said. Many of these young girls, once they've been vulnerable once they were young, especially if they've been manipulated by older men a lot of the time, they will find themselves like that in relationships over and over, where actually they're not overly comfortable in that relationship. They may be engaging in sexual practices that they don't really want to do, but that desire and that want to please is still there, and they're not having the confidence to just say no. I don't want to do that. And part of that is then the fear of rejection that they'll receive afterwards. I'm not saying that's in Emma's case, but I'm just saying that happens for a lot of women. And like that, you'll have women who are still then in their 30s and in their 40s, still don't have that confidence to not say no to things sexually that they actually don't want to be doing. And then many of these people then will also then believe that their child should know about consent, so that they don't end up in the same kind of relationships that themselves have been in.
That's it. It's important. I think if people understood the true definitions of the different types of abuse and how consent is a massive part of that, I think if people were properly educated on that, I think it would definitely change their view, because everybody seems to think it empowers. And I keep going back to that teacher in Cardiff Bay, the female teacher. I looked into her eyes and she was a genuine, kind-hearted person. I could see it in her, right? And she genuinely believed what she was doing was a fantastic thing that was helping these girls, you know, and the boys as well. And I was like, oh, it's so disheartening, you know. But these people, they aren't used to that taboo way of life. They're not interested. They're not introduced to that taboo way of life. The only thing they get introduced to is the NSPCC stat, the law about the age of consent, and the ONS stats. And that is not enough.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm just looking at the time.
Yeah, we're on past now. So is there anything
Yeah.
you want to say to finish up?
Yeah, so I just wanted to reiterate, just for you guys yourselves to look at some of the organisations that are involved, like UniAIDS, International Planned Parenthood Federation, Planned Parenthood themselves, World Health Organization, the Kinsey Institute, Alfred Kinsey, Wardle Pomeroy. Look at, just go through CCAS, look at the different directors, the different presidents, then look into them and what kind of what they have promoted within those organizations, which is what, you know, what I have had to do, what Kim has had to do. You know, many people asking us just, you know, for all this information. The best way is to learn it yourself. And I can't tell you the hours I've just been on Google looking at different names and I come across somebody else's name. So research these companies now. Research the people who are advocating for this, the Family Planning Association, look at their links, who are they linked to? Again, you've got Brook, you've got Durex, you've got Bish, they are some of the associations.
Even the individuals, look into their employment history, look at where they've been, you know, guys.
Follow the money.
Okay, the kids are relying on us to do this. This is the least we can do, you know. We're not going out to war with guns or anything like that, you know. We need to take responsibility here now, and we need to speak up, right? We can do far better than this. Like Adele said, this is far from a campaign against sex education as you guys perceive it to be, right? This is a campaign because we can do far better than this. Far better, guys, you know, and as long as we've got your support, we are willing to do all the work. You know, we've linked up now with world-class psychiatrists, pediatric and adolescent psychiatrists who are writing training packages with us, guys. You know, we need you as a support now. We can do this. We can do so much better. If there's one thing you don't like, that's for you to stand up and say no, okay? Because if there was one car coming on the road, you wouldn't tell your child to run quick, would you? You tell your child to wait. And that's what this is about. There's no rush. We can do better than this. Right, guys? We're in it for the long haul, but we just need you lot behind us.
I just seen another one of Emma's comments there. I'm not going to read that out as such, but you know, again, Emma was abused herself, so already it's the start of an unhealthy view and unhealthy knowledge of sexual activity for a child. It shouldn't happen, and shouldn't happen by anybody, but particularly then when it's family members that are massively breaching that trust, and it's just disgusting.
That's right. These crimes don't come out for years, guys. Come on, we can be a preventative model here. There's never a preventative model for this, right?
Absolutely.
They're victimized at the time. They're victimized by the system. They've got to go through interview if they get a chance. If it goes to CPS, they've got to go to court. Even if they're lucky enough to get a conviction, it doesn't end there because there's license, there's release, okay? The pain never goes away. When there's a new story in the paper, the pain is always going to be there. Let's be part of the healing process. Let's stop these things from happening, and we can do that. And it's simple. All we got to do is educate people. It's easy enough, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Right, so we wrap that up here now for tonight. Kim, then next week, what are we starting next week? Then it's institutional abuse next week, isn't it?
We're going to institutional abuse, guys. We're going to explain to you the different types of institutional abuse. We've got some incredible guests on. I just think the world of them. Everyone knows how much I work with the institutional abuse. And these are the kids I always carry in my heart that I am fortunate to have met. Share the platform with them. They'll be telling you stories, you know, like people say, oh, they wouldn't do that. But they're going to be telling you the horror stories about the UK and what happened to them in care by high-profile people. There's government documents to back them up. Everything is fact. Yeah, guys, we started with institutional abuse with the care homes, schools. We'll be speaking to
Yeah.
survivors, and then we'll be going on to then well, the abuse of the system then. So when people go to the system for help, what actually happens to them and why does it happen to them? Now, so that's pretty much the avenue we're going to go down over the next couple of weeks now. But I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, me too. So thank you for listening in, joining in. I hope it was when there is a lot of information and I gotta keep looking to check that I've got my facts right. I do worry that I'm stuttering and spluttering around the place. So so I hope you all understood what it is that we were trying to educate with you all today, and we look forward to seeing you next Sunday.
Yeah, thanks guys, thanks for watching, much appreciated. Night everyone.
All right, good night.